A happy married couple? Well, they once were. Here's a story about sex, money, lies, and murder. In the rural area of New Hampshire, a wealthy couple lived in a mansion with 4,673 acres of land. They had a beautiful life, a beautiful farm, and lots of money. Mr. and Mrs. Davis loved to throw lavish parties and were well known in their community. Mr. Davis, a plastic surgeon, and Miss Davis, an accountant for a multi-millionaire company. Needless to say, they were well off. As the years went by, the Davis couple began to have marital issues. Miss Davis began to suspect her husband was having an affair with her best friend Susie. Mr. Davis had no clue that his wife was onto him and his mischievous behavior. After 12 years of marriage, the Davis couple, still without children, Mr. Davis wanted kids more than anything else in the world, and he would get it no matter what. After a lavish party on October the 18th, a co-worker of Miss Davis that had attended the party pulled Miss Davis to the side and explained to her how she had seen Susie and her husband upstairs in the bathroom together. Miss Davis listened and pretended to make light of the situation. Her reputation was very important to her. She thanked her co-worker and continued to mingle around her mansion, talking to her other guests. A few months later, Miss Davis overheard Mr. Davis talking on the phone. The conversation was very flirty, but there was something that Mr. Davis said that may have been the beginning of the end. Mr. Davis began to use his work as an excuse for coming home late. One night, Miss Davis went downstairs while Mr. Davis was sleeping, and she had hid a tracker on his car. Mr. Davis had been going to Susie's home after work and pulling his car into her garage. As furious as Miss Davis was after she had found out about her husband and her best friend, she kept calm and pretended not to know about anything. Miss Davis began to gain evidence of the affair. She had hired a private investigator to take pictures. Let's just say this private investigator was not your average worker. Miss Davis had paid him $1.2 million to keep his mouth shut. On March 4th, Miss Davis told her husband that she had to go out of town on a business trip and wouldn't be back for 3 days. Miss Davis packed her bags and checked into a hotel about 30 minutes outside of the city. After 10 hours, Miss Davis called her husband and told him that she had made it to Philadelphia safely for her so-called business trip. Thinking his wife was out of town, Mr. Davis brought Susie over his house. He really wanted to show her the life that they could have together, especially now that Susie was 3 months pregnant with Mr. Davis's baby. They had talked about moving away and starting a new life together. At 2:00 a.m. on March the 5th, Mrs. Davis had unarmed the alarms to her mansion and snuck into her home. Mrs. Davis went into her bedroom to find Susie and her husband in bed together, sound asleep. Miss Davis took a hammer and hit Susie in the back of the head, killing her instantly. She then did the same thing to her husband, only knocking him unconscious. Miss Davis tied her husband up and dragged him to the basement, where she waited on him to come to. Mr. Davis awoke with his wife standing over him with a handsaw full of blood. As Mr. Davis pleaded for his life, Miss Davis began to take that wooden handsaw and slowly disassemble his penis. Then she slowly cut off one testicle at a time. After Miss Davis had cut her husband up into little pieces, she took him out to their farm and fed him to the pigs. The pigs were pretty full from previously eating Susie, but they managed to finish off both of the bodies by daybreak. Want to find out what happened to Mrs. Davis? Stay tuned. We'll be back. By the way, this is Mrs. Davis's hand, if anyone is wondering. Y'all, I got too much time on my hands. I have took off of work for like a whole week. And I had literally wrote this story, y'all, and read it to my husband. He was like, "Ooh, that's good." And I was like, "Help me." I was like, "Is it too predictable? Like, give me some, give me a twist that I can do to it." He didn't help me at all, y'all, but he loves this set of nails. Every time I turn around, I can hear him on his phone. Doom, 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 doom. And I'm like, "You're listening to my story again? Are you watching that video again?" But look, y'all, I was showing y'all right here on the nail. You see where it's jaggedy right there, where I was cutting into it and it was all jagged and, messed up. Well, in the beginning of my nail journey, I used to lay my application and I would file. Like, I felt like that my application had to be smooth and crisp before I capped with clear acrylic, because for some reason in my mind I felt like if the application was all jaggedy and messed up and I put clear over it, you would still see it. I would just be filing the clear, but I wouldn't be filing the under part, like the application part. So to me, it's like putting a clear glass over a mountain. You could still see the jagged areas. You know what I mean? So yes, y'all, in the beginning, I can admit I used to file twice. I used to file my application. After I done my application, I would get it filed nice and crisp and, how I wanted it. And then I would cap with clear acrylic. You do not have to do that, y'all. You do not have to do that, so do not make that mistake. And again, I've made another mistake by not switching my phone from the last time I went live back to the lock on the orientation. So this is why this video is coming out like a short. But I hope you guys enjoyed the scary story. If you want another scary story, let me know in the comments, because I am going to do another spooky set. Thank you all for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.